Well, I went on a recent RPG buying spell, and that has prompted me to take a look at my gaming office and realize that I've got a bunch of things, most of which I've bought, a couple of which have been sent to me that I have not had a chance to actually use on the channel. So I thought people have expressed interest over the years in kind of what sort of stuff I have lying around. So this video is going to go through some of these things. This isn't actually every single thing that hasn't been on the channel, of course, but it's the newer stuff that has come into Geek Gamers gaming life, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Before I do, a quick self-promotion for my own two books. My book, Wanderings, which is a Gothic roll and read table, is available now, and this can be used as a source book for backstory, to create session environments, to give events that happen in a story. It doesn't need to be used with just Gothic. The Gothic in it refers to the fact that this is chosen, the excerpts here are chosen from classic Gothic literature. It can be used in any manner of RPG types of themes. As well as my solo GM guide is now available, and this is the printed copy. It's available digitally as well, published by Modifius. It has a ton of system-neutral tricks, strategies, tips. It kind of forms the backbone of the approach that you see that I take on the channel. And of course, it's also filled with tons, 70 plus pages of various types of random tables. So these are my two books currently available, and there's links to purchasing of these items down below. But to get to things that I have purchased for the most part, there was a big sale at Exalted Funeral recently, and I fell sucker to it and bought a ton of stuff. We're going to look here at some of these things that I got. The Promised Primordia, this is it's a supplement for Troika. I hope to be bringing you Troika on the channel with a solo demo gameplay. I think this is technically, like, whatever this means, unofficially or fan-made or whatever. It is, it's an independent production. Here we go. And it is probably something, it appealed, I mean, frankly, just the art appealed to me. As you know, if you watch the channel, I sort of unabashedly will be drawn in and think it's completely valid to be attracted to things that, for aesthetic reasons. In any case, this is a hex crawl, and it also has a dungeon crawl, and it has some backgrounds, some spells, some items, enemies, randomizers for backstories, weather, dreams, plot hooks, and more. And I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to make use of it, but it will appear somehow in the Troika video that I do when I get to that. So that was kind of the first thing I bought, and then the rest of it with some intentionality. And then this was a total impulse buy. This is Below Dwelling Sewer Mutants. We'll just leave it at that. BDS&M. It is, I guess it's a short rule set. It came with these stickers, and it's actually, honestly, slightly hard to read. It's a bunch of mutants. It's a bunch of mutants, and a setting, the Undermuck, the slimiest, greenest, sludgiest sewer system you've ever seen. And I was, again, oddly attracted to it by the art and the kind of neon look of it. I have not done on the channel Mutant Crawl Classics. I've talked about Mutant Crawl Classics a bunch because I own it, and the concept of mutants and things is something that I like, and this kind of campy approach to it I like. And I'm thinking or wondering whether somehow I can take, part of the reason I haven't done Mutant Crawl Classics is just there's a bunch of reasons, but that system doesn't really speak to me. I don't like the D30 dice, etc. But there's something about it that appeals enough that maybe I'll try to take MCC and put it into this lighter system. I don't know. But that when I saw this, aside from just being attracted to this neon, I thought maybe I could take that big system and somehow strip it down, and I don't know. Anyway, I have it. There it is. You may see it again. This is Liminal Horror, and Liminal Horror is the acknowledgments here you can see are to games I love: Cairn, Into the Odd, Knave, Maze Rats, and it is a classless rules light system that is pitched as a modern cosmic horror hack of Cairn, which in itself was inspired by Into the Odd and Knave, and that's why I got it. And I love this whole magic system with putting together various effects. So you're rolling, you have a spell formula, and then you would come up with a spell with these suggestive words. This really works for my imagination, and the fact that it is based on those systems is something that appealed to me. So I will probably be doing some version of this, maybe bringing back Knave. I do plan Into the Odd is coming out in a more finished form soon from Free League, and I plan to be presenting that. So maybe this will come in to play somehow with that. I don't know. So this is Liminal Horror, really cool, kind of creepy, eyeballish art on the cover. This Rangers of the Midden Vale that I also bought here is described as a tabletop role-playing game set in the harsh and unyielding lands of the Midden Vale. We play as a band of capable and intrepid rangers, traveling throughout the Vale to protect those that call it home from trolls, the dead, monstrous terrors, and humans who have turned their back on their kin. So, pretty standard in a way. I'll say, when I looked at it online, I actually thought it was a solo design, but it's not. But the way the tables are, so for example, here's a region table here in the Badlands, something that I love and I've talked about often on the channel, that everything is numbered here to roll on. Now, maybe the intention is for the GM, whatever they call the GM here, to roll on this to get random events, but it seems very likely to me to be easy with all of this randomized for you to create some way of traveling overland if it doesn't exist here as a system. I certainly have a bunch of things that I could use to do overland travel rules and then just get to a region and roll on something. So I don't know, this looks really, really promising to me for pretty easy importation into a solo mode, maybe using the Into the Weird and Into the Wild and Weird hex crawl rules. I presented that on the channel a little while ago, or I have a supplement called BrickaBrack Adventures, maybe something like that. So this is definitely something I'm going to work with and hope to bring to you on the channel. And then the final thing, this was just a total impulse buy that I bought. This is Creatures of the Dying World. It's a Morkborg bestiary supplement here with just a bunch of creatures. And again, no doubt, something I did not need. But we have a brownie, we have frozen souls, haunted death mask. I like the presentation of it, and it was just something I wanted to have, and no concept of whether I will ever get to it or use it. But I like the story aspect and the presentation of it. To me, it is, when I see something like this, it invites me to think about making my own story about it. Maybe what I would do would be, I don't know how many of them are in here, maybe 20. I would just number them and could see starting a whole session just by rolling on getting one of these and using the story about it as the story about what I was going to do if I was doing Morkborg. And speaking of Morkborg, I did want to show, I've had this for a while. It was a gift from a viewer of the channel, much appreciated gift from a viewer. This is the Morkborg actual solo supplemental material. So this is the solo defilement supplement that gives, in fact, actual solo rules and what would they call moves is what they're called, moves, for playing Morkborg solo. And it kind of extrapolates and generalizes things to give you even a general adventuring move to help you create or play out a solo session, and has a lot of random tables in it as well. There's dungeon crawling rules for it. And then there's another supplement which has things like cursed cities, and it's more like a city crawl. One thing I really do want to do, and maybe it will happen in Morkborg, or there's other rule sets that I have that I could do this with, is to do some city crawling, some more urban kind of settings. I live in a city. I live in one of the biggest cities in the world, and I'm a city person in that way, and I haven't really examined that, I think, enough on the channel. So that's in my mind as well. We have a couple here of adventures, some sewers, and this is a country garden. Just a great bunch of Morkborg material here that I really thank my viewers so much for sending me. I've been reading through it a lot and just haven't gotten to it on the channel. D100 items and trinkets. This ferritory has a lot of, this is a collection, I believe, of supplemental material, and it is very rich in design, as you would expect. There are some, I think this is an actual adventure. So a lot of Morkborg stuff, as well as Dark Fort. Dark Fort is the version of the dungeon crawl that became Morkborg, and this is something, it's pretty simple. I'm thinking in a way of bringing this together with some other things I have for a dungeon crawl experience that is based in this. Haven't gotten to that yet. You know, there's just so much, and so much on my to-do list. So anyway, that's the Morkborg material I have, explicitly solo based, thanks to my viewer for sending that to me. Moving on, this is also, speaking of solo, this is something I bought a while ago. This was suggested to me by a viewer in comments. This is something called Mystic Punks. It is kind of along the lines of a choose your own adventure, which typically I don't like to do. You can see, you can flip through the book here, and there's you come to different things and are sent to different places and whatever. I started to play it. I set up a character. Let's see, read it here. Students have gone missing at Star Valley High School, and no one seems to care. You determine that their disappearances are the result of otherworldly invasions. As a teenage misfit, you've only ever used your mystic powers to perform dark rituals. But now those powers are the only thing that can save your classmates and stop a supernatural legion from consuming you and your school. This contains 4 out-of-print role-playing games and zines and a new final scenario. So I guess it's like almost a campaign for this character and in this setting. As I said, I set it up. I don't know. There was something about the beginning of it. Maybe the way it started, it felt a little slow or something. I'm going to come back to it because it looks like something. I understand why it was recommended, and it does look kind of different. And if I think you go through the whole campaign, there's probably a lot of gameplay in here. So this is something I'm going to get back to, and if it works out and I have something useful to say about it, you may see more comments about it on the channel. But that's a look at mixed. Oh, that's also from Exalted Funeral. I got this a while ago, but it also came from Exalted Funeral. So that's Mystic Punks. And as I have mentioned, I have this copy of Knock. This is Knock issue number 3. And I've done separate videos on the first 2 issues, but for this one, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it here. It doesn't have the really compelling cover image that the other 2 did of this of a creature, at least to me. I mean, this is kind of cool when you open it up. The characters are like in the mouth of this creature, but there's something a little bit less compelling, I think, about this. In any case, doesn't have anything to do with the content, which is really cool. This is a compendium of miscellanea for use with old school role-playing games. It is, to the extent that there is any uniformity in it, it is keyed to old school essentials, the monsters and NPCs and such that are in here, but it really can be used with multiple systems. It's called an adventure gaming bric-a-brac, and it's just filled with both original content and repurposed content from the internet for, well, as the editor says, for OSR. It's pearls of OSR wisdom. I'm not going to go through everything that's here. It's just too lengthy, but there are a combination of articles and as well as random tables that you can draw on. All right, there we go. We get a better look here. It's a combination of articles as well as random tables and things of that nature. So, for example, here is the table. This is, I think, reproduced, or there's similar tables in other issues of Knock. What happens to the bodies? You can roll on this table depending on whether it's a humanoid or a large monster, something relatively simple like that, as well as articles, longer articles about various aspects of role-playing. Here's D66 sites to stumble upon in the woods. And if you're familiar with these compilations, you know that the design of them is quite evocative and varied within the pieces. And here we have a revisiting the domain game. This is a series of tables that you can roll on to create, if you have characters that sort of live somewhere, to give them some issues and problems with where they live, for example. And they may have unruly neighbors and things of that sort. This is an article about some principles of running games which devote time to domain management, and a piece here thinking about ways to solve problems that don't necessarily use your traditional swords and such. And then it comes along with a D100 table that provides items for problem solving. So you can roll on this, for example, and get a primitive diving apparatus, a leather suit, fishbowl helmet, leather air horse and pump, incredibly cumbersome to use, etc. I personally would probably use this as I want to do, to even start a session. Just kind of roll up something and see what you get, and then even go from there to choose a rule set. So 92, a beautiful white wedding dress, handy for faking tragic apparitions. And then there's a price. Maybe they're all attached to with a price in case you wanted to use them in that way. But this would be something, I think, for me, a box containing hundreds of tiny silver bells, can be tied to strings, tripwires, etc. as an alarm system. Just 100 random things, and could be great inspiration. Speaking of inspiration, there is this random wilderness in a deck of cards. So this is a series of tables that would allow you to come up with some random, to create and populate a wilderness using a poker deck of cards and a D20. There's a piece here called Humanizing the Monsters, and it has a discussion of ways to make monsters a little bit more humanized, and then a table here that gives you some options for what the humanizing trait might be and what the monstrous trait might be. So, some DM advice, my 10 commandments for good refereeing, D12 hooks to gather at the counter. So So it's kind of all over the place, as a compendium would be. This is a series of tables to create arena fights. And here's D20 kids for your dungeons. Our dungeons and their surroundings are too often inhabited exclusively by adults. To remedy this, sprinkle your campaign with a measure of careless youth with the NPCs below. And it says, unless stated otherwise, assume all kids are level 0 commoners with 1 hit point. So we have, as promised, a D20. And here is a table of 1 hit point monsters. So you don't have to just deal with rats and centipedes. You can get a talking magpie or a vampire bat. There's an article here, 11 questions you need to answer about your ruins. And it provides both the questions, and you could answer them with rolls, D20 rolls or D10 rolls, or just think about those questions. And I think this is particularly useful in terms of creating not only backstory, but potential hooks for sessions. And I could see using this quite a bit. So what is the ruin? What can you expect to find in the ruin? What secrets does it hide? Why was it abandoned? What keeps people away from it, etc.? What pleasant adventures await people who arrive there? So I think this would be really very useful for creating a session or for having an immediate kind of history or three-dimensionality to something that you just arrived at if you were walking around and you said that, oh, here is a ruin. So, and then it finishes up, as these do, with some maps of places, as well as some monstrosities and characters here. Again, these are key to old school essentials, but they could be modified to various other rule sets. And they're sort of all over the place with the space vampire and this kind of like 70s-ish laser mage and this headless humanoid. Really cool piece of art there. So that is a brief look inside Knock number 3, an adventure gaming bric-a-brac. I think if you're familiar with these at all, you can know that there is they are chock full of material, and especially for soloists, I think there's a lot here that could start you out on an adventure or provide you with story seeds and narrative direction as you go. And it also comes with a card, one die drop character backstory generator with just a whole bunch of, you drop your D6s here. If you could get them to land this way, that might be tough. And then based on the number that comes up, whatever you landed on either recently happened, it happened last year, or it happened in your childhood or whatever. So cool concept. I'm not sure how much it would actually work on this tight kind of layout, but that's a cool concept. You could always number this and, roll dice and get numbers that way. So that's a look inside of Knock number 3. I haven't. So this is the Lantern. It's a 4 Against Darkness zine issue 2 that I bought a little while ago. For a while, I didn't do anything about 4 Against Darkness on the channel, and people kept asking me, did I play it? Why didn't I like it? They assumed because I didn't have videos on it that I didn't like it, which wasn't true at all. I really like it. And I finally did a video on it, and I'm thinking I have so much 4 Against Darkness stuff that I really, really love playing. I bought this zine because it has some like choose your own adventure type of things that I thought would be fun to do. And in this one, there are ones for various characters. So this Watery Cave of the Witch is levels 5 to 9, but there are other ones in here that are for lower level characters. So I was thinking of making some new characters and taking them through these. When I play 4 Against Darkness, I tend toward most of my collection has to do with like outdoor stuff and the Fae kind of direction of that. I tend to stay away from the dungeon crawls, but I have also been using, somebody sent me these playing cards, and I'll put the link to them down below. I had seen these, or I can't remember. I had seen them in use, or I read about them, and um, reached out to the designer who sent them to me a while ago. I haven't used them on the channel yet, but they go really well with 4 Against Darkness. So what these are is these are map and dice playing cards. They are illustrated dungeon geomorphs, as well as D20, D6, and D100 die results with some descriptive tiles. And they are also 4 suits and 2 jokers and 54 cards. So you could just use them as a card deck. But what you can see here is each card has the poker deck suits and numbers, and then the aforementioned die rolls. So you have your D20, D6, and D100 die rolls. Obviously, there's only 54 cards, so it's going to be selective in terms of the D100. And you also have a dungeon map, and you also have some descriptive words here. So you have the Tomb of the Last King, or Vacated by Mystics. And it's nicely general enough that it can be very inspirational if you just lay these out, if you're using them either as a dungeon, like so, just for the mapping of it, or to also bring in the kind of evocative chamber of many floors, for example. So they're pretty versatile, and I think for doing something like a modification of 4 Against Darkness, if you just kind of want to quickly play something and put these down and allow your mind to wander a little bit, they're useful for that. And of course, you have all your dice that come up as well if you want to use those values. All right, a couple more, last 2 things. So I bought this a while ago. I think I used it maybe briefly once in a video. Arcane Artifacts and Curios by Madeline Hale. It is, well, there's no description on the back. It's just magic items. But what I really like about it, there's a couple things I like about it. One is that it's grouped kind of by type. So we have jewelry, clothing, armor, containers, books, journals, and scrolls, trinkets, then there is miscellaneous tools, etc. And also that everything is given a history, that we are given a description of what it is, how it is enchanted or how it works, as well as a history to it. And I think that, and then of course it's all numbered. So within each section you can roll and get random, there's ways of just randomizing this completely or randomizing it within the section to get something. So of course I really like that too. Lockjaw Toffee. And to me, it's the history part that always draws me to things. So to use this to provide yourself with trinkets or random items, you have this built-in description of a history, and that is narratively very useful when doing solo play. And then finally, I've had this for a while. This is 760 patrons for Traveler, contacts, mentors, benefactors, and financiers. And I haven't used it. I haven't done any Traveler stuff. I think this is definitely not, for the original Traveler, but I don't know the date of publication here. It allows you to roll up random patron encounters, and you can start with a D66 roll. If you want to do it totally randomly, D66 roll will bring you to the type of patron it is. So let's say we got a scholar on page 72, and within that we would go to this section here, and we would do another D66 roll or 2 to tell us, well, the antagonist patron is the lab researcher, and the protagonist is the document manager. And then we could look them up within here to see what they actually have. And then even within each section, there are little random tables. So the lab researcher, for example, I think we said that was going to be our protagonist. We get some information about this person stuck in a lab when his colleagues are out on scientific expeditions. This jealous scientist is forced to work in an enclosed environment for long hours and few freedoms. He would give just about anything to get out in the field where the action is. And then it has information for the referee. So, for example, the lab researcher is at the end of his patience from 5 consecutive double shifts in the lab, or going to do something drastic for some time off. It's obviously just a ton of random kind of NPCs with motivations and things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be in Traveler. I think that this could work for many different kinds of rule sets, and I don't know why I haven't used it yet. I think partially because I've been focused on, I want to do something specifically on Traveler, and I've been kind of saving it for that. Obviously, a naval pilot is not going to work in some kind of like fantasy kind of scenario, but it many of the options I think could. We have a whole thing on rogues, citizens, drifters. You don't need to roll on this. You could just choose. Let's look. So that is a brief look into some of the things in the office that haven't made their way on the channel yet, and some of them will, some of them might not. Let me know if there's any interest in, I feel like there's a lot of 4 Against Darkness videos out there, but if there's any interest in my take on 4 Against Darkness now after playing it for a number of years, let me know about that. And as I said, hopefully Troika will be coming soon. As always, thanks for watching.